Okay, so now we should be live on Facebook as well. And I see the first participants joining in. Welcome, everyone. Let's wait for a few more minutes before we get started.
I think she's communicating, huh? You've seen her.
Oh, yeah. Julie, is that you?
She's saying she's there.
Okay. You mean as an attendee?
Yeah, she sent a message saying she's there.
Is she called Zodiac?
Yeah, I think it's her.
And let's see.
I think that's looks like her. So Christoph, we can get started.
I think there's another one over there. Okay. Yeah, while we figure it out, let me welcome you all to tonight's Zoom conference on participation in a democracy. I guess it's a very important topic because a democracy is something that may be written on a constitution and in many other places. But in order for it to really be a democracy, we need to live it all day by day. And that means that we all have to participate in it. And the Kenyan Constitution gives many opportunities to participate, but there are also some obstacles to participation. And I'm very glad that we have some very respectable and honorable guests today to discuss those obstacles in participation, but also to show the prospects and why participation is so important in a democracy, and discuss ways on how we shall participate in democracy, what are the opportunities, and maybe also hear some stories of how participation has changed lives and livelihoods for ourselves, for our communities. So yeah, Kingwa will introduce our guests later on, and I wish you all a very good discussion. And also please follow the discussion not only passively as a viewer, but also participate yourself on the social medias, on Twitter under hashtag #RethinkingDemocracy and Kaskenya. You can follow the discussion on Facebook as well, where we stream live parallel to Zoom. And you can comment there. You can also use the chat here or the Q&A section to also get your views into the discussion, and so that we hopefully have a good conference tonight. And with that, Kingwa, I give the word to you.
Thank you very much, Christoph, and thank you, Cass, for hosting this. So just as we get started, we are going to play a short clip of something that took place on Sabasaba Day. I know that a lot of us saw it, so we're just going to look at it as we begin.
Kenyans, let's watch! I think justice happens! I'm not falling! What have I done? I don't have a right to protest in my country. I'm not going.
Madam, okay.
I'm not cooperating and I'm not going. Why are you arresting me? Why? Give me a reason. I protest because you're killing us.
Who is killing you?
You police. You're killing us in our communities. Who are communities? Why do you want to arrest me?
Hey.
People power! When we lose our fear, they lose their power. When we lose our fear, they lose their power. When we lose our fear, no more killings. No more killings. No more killings.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that, Christoph. And that took place on Sabasaba Day, and I know that a lot of us saw that clip, and a lot of us really know about the kind of happenings that took place, whereby on a day that we were actually supposed to be celebrating freedom, on a day that we're supposed to be commemorating those that had gone before us and had really been trying to expand the space for democracy, was a day that was actually just replete with repression in itself, with the tear gassing and everything. So that really is the backdrop for this conversation today, where we're looking at, where we're really taking stock of how we're doing in terms of democratic participation. And so first I want to welcome our panelists. We are joined by a group of panelists that are the best of the best of the best. Some of them have been in the field, in the trenches for the past 20 years, 30 years, for a very long time, and they just have always been committed to the cause. Some of them are young and upcoming and just fresh new blood with new ideas and new spirit about, in terms of where we need the country to go. So this is really going to be a very good discussion. So even as I welcome the panelists, I'd also want to welcome the participants. I've already seen that we have Zippy Okothia, Karibu Sana. And rather our attendees, I've seen Zippy, Bina Maseno, Daisy, Frida Marangu, Masharia Gaido, Maikisa, I mean, so many others that I won't be able to mention everybody. But just to welcome you all for this discussion, and it's part of the series of discussion that Konrad Adenauer has been holding in place of the annual Rethinking Democracy conference that was set to take place. And one way in which we're trying to reimagine this, rather in which the framework with which we hold these discussions is looking at them as a space to touch base as a group, the group of the idealists, the thinkers, the dreamers, because what has been missing possibly in the past has been just the connection of all of us. But I feel like right now is a very key moment in time. Right now is a very key opportunity. And I know already some of you are involved in a lot of projects and programs that really are helping us move forward towards democracy. But first, as we begin, I'd like to, is Julie still here with us on the panel? I saw she was here, but she's gone. Okay, we'll try to raise her, but I wanted for her to talk about the backdrop towards that video that you have seen. And that video went viral, and she expressed a lot of what people were feeling right now, the kind of repression, the state we are, whereby things are impossible, where you cannot even be bullied anymore. Like, you just cannot continue to be bullied. That is something that a lot of people are feeling, that we've been pushed to the wall for so long and so much that really it's over, which means that we are at a ripe period of change, a ripe period of transition, a ripe period of something new. So I will just begin so we'll just jump into it and ask, to begin with, just to ask just really to ask everyone to give their thoughts on how do you think we are doing in terms of democracy today. And so maybe we could begin with George Kegoro. George Kegoro is the Kenyan Human Rights. George Kegoro he's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, current executive director of Kenya Human Rights Commission. He's also an established lawyer who served as the executive director of the LSK from 1998 to 2006. He worked as a counsel in the Office of the Attorney General, where he was responsible for legal research for the purpose of legal reform. In the year 2007, George was appointed the executive director at ICJ. Then a distinguished lawyer, he is the immediate former executive director of the Kenya section of ICJ, has previously served as the secretary to the Commission of Inquiry on the Post-Election Violence, the WAKI Commission. He was joint secretary to the Commission of Inquiry, the Goldenberg scandal. So George really has been in the scene, seeing some of the worst that has happened in this country in terms of injustice, in terms of violation of democracy. So George, karibu sana, just how do you think we are doing in terms of democracy today? Out of 10, what would you give it?
I think we are in a moment of importance, and thank you very much, first of all, KK, for having me in this conversation. I think the moment we are in, some people have likened it to the moment we were in as a country in 1992 or thereabouts, or rather the period leading up to 1992. The period leading up to 1992, when the country held its first multi-party elections, we had gone through a long dispensation of one-party politics, then triggered by global factors such as the fall of the Berlin Wall and then at the end of the Cold War. The country now had to make this huge decision for itself. Does it democratize? Does it go the multi-party politics way, or does it remain a single party way? And KANU convened in extraordinary fashion, and they established the Saitoti Committee that then provided a pathway to the country going back into multi-party politics in 1992. So that was a major turning point for the country. Now we are at exactly the same kind of turning point, but this is a turning point in the reverse direction. We've had multi-party politics with huge difficulties, of course, in the experience of multi-party politics since 1992, and now we are in 2020 facing an election in 2 years' time. The question of whether or not we maintain Kenya as a multi-party state, or we take Kenya back into a single-party state, it is actually the question that is at the table right now. Now, as I've said, our multi-party experience has been a very difficult one at certain times. In '92, with the first experience of multi-party politics, we also had a political violence. The political violence was introduced to make it costly for the country to make a political choice other than KANU as the leading party. And then we had political violence in 1997, a bit of it in 2002, a huge amount of it in 2007. And all the political violence we've had is discourage the public from making a choice other than the decision of the political establishment for the party to continue, as to which party should continue in power. Now, what has happened is that the elites in charge of this country have found it extremely expensive to keep us in a path of political violence as a way of maintaining the status quo. The violence of 2007 was particularly bad for them because they almost lost the country. And if they had lost the country because of political violence, they would all have lost everything. Now, I need to characterize the violence of 1992, of 1997, and 2007. It's not the nature of that violence. There are slight but very important variations in the way that violence was done. In 1992, violence was committed by KANU, but using vigilantes. The state, it was state violence, but dressed up through vigilantes, villagers and groups like that, so as to create a context of deniability. The state was saying, we are not responsible for this violence because you're not seeing police and so on and so forth carrying it out. Villagers in the Kayas or whatever attacked in Mombasa. That was the state carrying out violence, but putting itself a distance between itself. 2007, the violence was different. There was state violence, but there was also, for the first time, violence that was carried out other than by the state. There was retaliatory violence. Citizens aggrieved by what had happened, organizing their own form of violence that very much scared the state and made this never occur. When we come to 2013, we see again violence, but when you come to 2017, extremely importantly, we see not as much violence as a threat to violence, because the preparations towards the 2017 election, we see a very, very deliberate announcement by Jubilee that if you try to commit violence in 2017, there's more violence. You saw body bags being bought by the police, and it being announced in the media that we have bought, but that was a warning that we have a lot more violence in store for you. So what has happened now as we prepare for 2022, and I'm getting to an answer to your question, is the political elite are getting tired of naked violence as a way of keeping themselves in power. So they are in the process of designing a new method. And that new method is BBI. That new method is get everybody to the tent, discuss, and divide Kenya up among themselves so that nobody has to be out in the streets to fight anybody else. No violence should be carried out if we all come onto the tent and divide Kenya up among ourselves. So we have moved, or we're in the process of moving from a very difficult experience of democratic expression or democratic election, which is imperfect, and we are moving into a form of warlordism, where every it's an ethnic confederation, where major ethnic communities and their warlords are coming to table and saying, I'm bringing you this group and you bring that group, and let's divide Kenya among ourselves, in which case we can go into the 2017-2022 elections in a predetermined fashion, and nobody has to suffer violence. That is where we are. It's a long answer, but I hope it's understandable.
Over 10, what grade, what would you give it out of 10?
As I said, it's...
No, just out of 10, what number?
I think 4 out of 10, because okay, we are sliding back into, if if BBI succeeds, it takes us back into 1991 when we had a single party state.
Wow. Okay, thank you so very much. It almost sounds like we might even be moving below the zero to the negative side of things. Thank you so much for that, George. Very broad overview, giving a very good context of what has been happening over the years and where we find ourselves. Caroline, how do you think we are doing in terms of democracy? What grade would you give us? And before you come on board, actually let me introduce you. And Caroline Wamboishege has a degree in business from the University of Liverpool. She has done humanitarian work in a war zone in the DRC, working as a liaison between aid groups and communities. She also canvassed to get out the black vote for the Labour Party in the UK. Caroline serves as a women's rights ambassador through an organization called the Women's Rights Awareness Program based in Kajiado. She also founded a nonprofit, Sozo Kenya Youth Initiative, which advocates to end inequality in low-income neighborhoods through social and economic empowerment. In 2013, Chege's love for Kajiado County and her passion for justice inspired her to run for a seat at the county assembly. So, karibu sana, Caroline. Very good to have you here.
Thank you.
Caroline was my primary schoolmate, and we were sharing in politics. Yeah, yes, woman with a lot to offer the country. So, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Kingwa, for having me here with great men. I'm glad to balance the female equation.
And women.
Great men and women, yes. I'm honored to balance the women equation. I just wanted to highlight.
You're not here as a token, you're here as you. Sorry.
What I wanted to highlight, number one, is the strides we are making in Kenya. I will only speak from my perspective. In 2013, when I vied for a position in Kajiado County, I was the only female on the ballot box. In 2017, when I vied for senator, I was the only female on the ballot box in a very patriarchal community in Kajiado County. So when I look back at the struggles, there are many strides and gains that have been made. As George was saying, when we look back in 2002, when the NAC coalition came, it promised the nation so many reforms, and we all spoke one voice, and we agreed. But immediately the government comes into power because of political interest and personal interest. They withdrew all the gains to meet the needs of their own political interest. So we have a government that seeks to serve political interest. Even when we look at BBI, it is there to serve the interest of a few and not the voice of wananchi. Today we are talking about democratic participation. It is founded on rule by the people. Who are the people? The citizens, wananchi. Rule by the people for the people is a founding principle of democracy. So when the people's voice is not heard, is why we see videos like the one you've just showed us earlier. When the voice of the people is unheard, the cry of the people is not listened to. The entire nation is rallied around the political interest of less than 20 Kenyans. And they say that Kenya will change the day we'll have a transparent and accountable government. And this comes through when the people are given a space to be able to hold the government accountable. The government needs to not be entrenched in hiding, but they need to be very open and systematic in the way that they accept the citizens are not against the government. We live in Kenya today it's as though citizens versus the government. We are not competing. We need to complement each other because the government is there to serve the people, not to serve political interest of the executive. And the thing that hinders democracy to progress today is what rightly Kegoro has said about ethnicity. So for instance, I'll just give a small scenario. Ethnicity forces us to not be democratic because we fear being castigated when we stand for a different opinion than the others. I am Wamboi, raised in Kajiado County. So I don't see myself as a tribe. I stand for principle, and I stand for the values. And then also, you see, when our government and our institutions are against public participation, which is enshrined in Article 10 in the Constitution, it is one of the values of this country. So when people are participating, it is because they love this country. They want to see it is for the good of the country. It is not that we are against the government. We are for our government. We uphold our government. So it is very important that the government realizes that the people are for the government. The executive are not the only ones who have got the best interest of this nation. Every Kenyan. In fact, we talk about human rights in this nation. A universal human right in 1948. All of us here, none of us were born in 1948. It says that every citizen has a right to participate in their country, either themselves or through a representative. So when a citizen participates, it is their human right.
That's really, you've captured two key issues: the issue of ethnicity, the issue, actually more than two, the issue of ethnicity, the question of patriarchy, and the issue of the fact of how our politics is really organized on a very elitist basis, which George had also talked about. So those are really strong, those are really good points, Caroline. Over 10, what number would you give?
Listening to George say 4, I was shocked. I would say the young people are very optimistic. I'd give it a 5.
Okay.
I'd give it a 5.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so Njeri Kabeberi, who a lot of us know, a very progressive lady who's been just really in the field for a long time, and she has the perspective of not just the local state of things, but also the international. So just read her profile. So Njeri Kabeberi is a director of Chapter 4 programs, former executive director of Greenpeace Africa, and she is a member of the board. She's been a member of the board of advisors with the International Center for Policy and Conflict, and a previous CEO of the Civil Society Reference Group. Other previous positions she has held include executive director of CMD, development coordinator for Eastern Central Africa for Amnesty International, board member of Kenya Human Rights Commission, and founder of the Citizens Coalition for Constitutional Change. Njeri Kabeberi has also been awarded several prizes, including the 2010 ILO Wedge Award in recognition of her work to increase women's rights in Kenya, the Frankfurt Chamber of Lawyers Humanity Award, and a Democracy Ribbon in the Netherlands in 2009. Her publications include various papers presented in the area of human rights, good governance, and political party development, women in politics, constitutional discourse, leadership, and integrity. And she was also a recipient of the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders Award. I think it was 2018. So she's a woman that I personally just really look up to, very grounded, very solid, very, very centered about what matters and what is at the core of it. And she's internationally, they take her and they they engage her really in the projects, but she always comes back home. So we're very honored and happy to have her here. So Jay, in your view, how are we doing in terms of democracy right
now? Thank you, Kingwa. And hello, everyone. My internet is a bit weak, so if it goes down, you will give another panelist the opportunity, and I'll come back when it improves again. But I'm still hanging around. I'm not going to switch off. First of all, in terms of numbers, let me start there because it seems you are quite keen to have the numbers. I would give it a 6, not a 4 like George. 1, because I'm very encouraged by the way the young people have taken up the struggle. About 1992 or 1991, when the time that George was referring to, I could have compared myself to that person in that clip at that time. And those days there were very few. It was unheard of for people to go out publicly and defy the police and defy the government. So for it to be happening today, for me, it gives me a lot of hope and a lot of pride. So I would not, you see, you don't judge democracy just by the performance of the government. You also judge democracy by the performance of the people and the civil and the communities, the civil society, the individuals. Are they just lagging behind and ignoring what is going on, or are they active? And that's why I would add 2 points, because the citizens are still active. In fact, I think the citizens are more active today than they were when I was out on the streets. I feel as if they are doing much more than what we were doing. We were very few in numbers those days. And now, there are communities everywhere. There are communities in nearly every slum. There's a community standing up for itself. In nearly every city, there's a community standing up for itself. So if we can judge democracy by not just the role of government, but by the participation of the people themselves and the position they have taken for themselves, I think we are not doing so badly as we would have been doing in the past. So I want to just say that, but I have other points that I want to give, and maybe I should just take this opportunity to give what I would call an opening speech on an opening, because now the internet is on democratic participation and what it means to me. And I don't know whether this is part of that question or you're going to ask that. I want to say that for me, it's generally the enjoyment of all inalienable rights and freedoms. And that is my right to life, my right to dignity as a person. It's so critical for me to feel that I have a right as an individual and as a human being in this country or in any part of the world that I travel to, because your dignity is taken away, especially when you travel, the searches at the airports, other things. And that time you feel violated as a human being. So for me, democracy is all nations that respect the democratic right of every citizen, irrespective of whether they are coming from Africa, from the war-torn zone in Africa, or they are coming from the US. But when you walk into an airport, you are respected as a human being and you are treated as a human being. And that then goes to every individual government. Every individual government should treat its people with respect and with dignity. And that doesn't always happen, as we are seeing. If you can look at the US, they say it's the largest democracy in the world. But for me, I would give it a 4. The largest democracy in the world. Look at how it is treating its minorities, because Black people in the US are minorities. And after over 200 years of that democracy, the people in the Black people in that country are still being treated as less human beings. So you have to judge democracy not by the election cycle, that every 4 years they have an election and that they have even been able to elect a Black president. You should be able to judge it by also the way it treats its minorities. And for me, any nation that treats its minorities with disregard and disrespect is not a democratic nation. Because democracy is not just about the rights of the majority, it is also about the rights of the minorities, yeah? So let me stop there. I want to come again and speak on this topic because I have quite a few points on what democracy really means to me and what it should mean to us. We should look deeper than the election cycle. The election cycle is, sometimes it's a kifumba macho. It gives us a different story, but it is not necessarily the true story. Let me pause there and I'll give somebody else a chance. I know you call me back again. Over.
All right. Thank you so much. And just really what you brought out, the issue of participation. I love the optimism, the fact that Kenyans have grown in terms of their expression, in terms of their willingness to get out. Like even the recent Sabasaba march, I was hearing remarks about how there are a lot more middle class people on the streets, which is something that we have not seen. We have not seen in the past. And again, back to the whole question of how Kenyans, really everyone has been pushed to the wall and recognizing that we can no longer leave politics for just the politicians and just for voters in course, but we all have to get involved. And another interesting thing is just really how you brought out the largest democracy in the world and how it's treating its minorities, and raising again the question of, even as we talk about democracy, is it time that we introduced a new language, new discourse to look at the issue of human dignity and human rights? Because at the core, at the end of it, that's really what we are looking for. That's what we are you all have been working for and working towards. And maybe the term democracy has become cliched with time. And again, going back to what the title of this series, which is Rethinking Democracy, that what can we do such that the term democracy no longer, because it's lost its sexiness in a way. So how can we make human dignity, human rights, that framework? What new framework do we need to bring in? And so now I'd like to bring in Honorable David Ochieng. David Ochieng is the Member of Parliament from Ugenya. And I know that a lot of us, when we look at politics, we believe that all politicians are terrible, all politicians are corrupt, all politicians, like, we believe that there's no more idealism in politics. But I actually happened to come across and meet Honorable Ochieng recently, and I managed to just really talk to him and hear his views, and I was extremely, extremely impressed and inspired that we have this caliber of leadership. So maybe just to say a little bit about him is that Honorable David Ochieng has a Bachelor of Laws from Moy University and a Master's in International Law and Economics from the World Trade Institute University of Bern, Switzerland. He's currently an MP Ugenya constituency at Kenya National Assembly. He's also an established lawyer and an international policy trade expert. And he's also the founder of a political party, the Movement for Democratic Change. And he aims to do a lot with it in terms of getting more people interested in politics of principle around the country. So very happy to have you on board, Mheshimiwa Ochieng. And yeah, so how do you think we are doing in terms of democracy? What number would you give it? Oh, just you can unmute. You can feel free to unmute.
Thank you so much, Kingwa. And thank you to everybody who has spoken about the topic. I think all of us are agreed on a couple of things. That one, we've moved quite a lot in terms of getting the country to where it is. We got probably a more open country than we had in 1992. We got more people participating in politics today. So I would say, to start with that, I would give it 50-50, 5 over 10, in the sense that, like someone said earlier, in Kenya, I will tell you, the citizens have moved, and they have moved because of what George said, how the country has also moved. In the last 30 years, the Kenyan citizen has become more informed, expects to participate more in his politics and what happens around him. Our laws have also changed dramatically towards ensuring that there's proper participation and democracy. What has not changed, and what I decry every day, is that the mind and the body of the Kenyan politician has not moved with the law. And so we've had the same people in these last 30, 40 years, those who fought to free up the space, those who fought to ensure that we have these changes happening, are in the scene, but it seems like they loved it when there was not so much space. Like they liked it when it was closed. Because tell me why. Every time we have an election and a dispute ensues, instead of sorting out the dispute well, we go extralegal. George talked about 07. In 07, after the post-election violence, we ignored the law and set up a new system. In 2017-18, when we thought that this time around the law will work, we've seen that there's a government now in force in Kenya. We don't know whether it's government established by law or by constitution or by what mechanism. What I mean here, Kingwa, is that we have refused to follow the law. We now follow individuals. And individuals are holding this country to ransom. The people that George called the ethnic warlords. And so we have to willy-nilly bend the law to fit their whimsical requirements. If they don't get what they want today, the law must be bent to allow them to get what they want. And that's why I say that Kenyans have moved and Kenyans really want the leaders to move with them. Well, their leaders are stuck in 91, 92. Number two is that as a country, we have for a long time taken our leaders to know everything. We've pampered them so much. And so they have come to believe that we will take anything they bring to us. And that's why, without being asked, someone is talking about in Kenya today a constitutional moment. We have a constitution that is less than 10 years old, not really implemented, but someone says, no, I sense a moment to again change the constitution. No Kenyan has asked for it. Kenyans are struggling to live with the new constitution to ensure that things are happening. And I can tell you, the reason I gave it a 5 is that if you go to the counties today, Kenyans are organizing to participate in the county processes. At the constituency level, Kenyans are organizing to participate in the constituency processes. At the national level, there's a lot of organization. People are trying to get to participate in this. A very good innovation of the new law. Part of what we're discussing this evening is participatory democracy. And an innovation of our new law is something called public participation by law. So that everything being done now, be it appointment of a PS, a minister, there must be public participation. And Kenyans are waking up to it and are using those mechanisms. And so for me, I would leave the history and say, like Jerry has said, that more Kenyans and more young people are trying to participate in these processes. But we have 2-3 things that block them. One is what someone said earlier, ethnicity. That if I come from Nyanza and I want to join politics today, and I want to run for a seat, I must participate, I must only join through a dominant political party. If I come from central Kenya, I must join a party that, is dominant in that area. So ethnicity, then add to a very skewed electoral system. And add to the fact that our politics is so expensive. Young people would want to participate in this, but just what you would call the sunk costs, what you'd call in business balance, the fee for joining is quite high. And so you will participate by giving your views and all that, but if you want to participate by being on the table, then there are so many barriers to that participation that I think we need to address also in this discussion. And so I'm to finish by quoting what a journalist, Linus Kakai, said recently on TV in a program. I think they call it, I don't know what they call it again. I remember the news gang. And he said this about young leaders in the country today. He said, there is yet to meet a leader who stands for anything. That all the young leaders in Kenya today stand for somebody. They're either standing for William Ruto or Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga. And so going forward, we will need to ensure that we have leaders who stand for the constitution, rule of law, and who stand for some ideas so that our participation is not just informed, but it is geared towards creating positive change. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. And I mean, just the issues that you brought out about, and I found that so interesting when you said that the politicians, that the ground has moved, but the politicians have not moved, which means that there's an opportunity. There is, first of all, factually, there is a leadership vacuum, yes, whereby leadership is defined as change, as working with people to improve their lives, to change their lives. So it means that there is a leadership vacuum. And yes, And what you're talking about, how people are organizing in the counties. Another interesting thing that you talked about was the skewed electoral system and the expensive electoral process, which have been some of the impediments holding us back from really having a political process that enables us to have the best kind of leaders emerge. And I mean, just reading about some of the things that you've been doing on the ground, the 4 technical institutions that you managed to set up in your own constituency, just by using the CDF money. But the fact is that the current electoral system cannot, okay, I don't want to say cannot, because that would be like sort of like cursing you, but it is very hard for people like you, like real performers, to get through, to actually get to the highest place. The other example that we usually give is Peter Kenneth. His constituency was the best performing, but when he went out on the national level, he was not able to get forward. So that's some very interesting.
Yes. But before you go, King One, what we just said now in terms of how to ensure that we don't lose people who have different ideas, is that then we're going to have to create new avenues and new methods of mobilizing. We cannot give up and say that because this and that happened, so and so, we cannot go. We have to get innovative ways, new ways of using the new rooms for participation, the new space we created for participation, to ensure that we are the dominant. We should not allow our people to be crowded out by the ethnic jingoists and ethnic warlords, like they were called by George.
Absolutely, and thank you for putting that in, that yes, we do have to do a lot of organizing. First of all, the fact that so many people think like us, it just simply means that it's about, and there is an energy, there's an energy, people are just, have been looking at for this for so long. And so it's just about now harnessing that energy, channeling that energy, and then getting us to where we need to be. Millie Luanga, one of the participants, says Africa generally, and indeed Kenya in particular, is growing. We are closing into defining a democratic space that works for us. Many people have a bit to say about how they need to be governed, and more questions arise when there's discourse on leadership. This is good. Now, I'd be interested to figure, because having been in this space, having sought democracy, having the kind of politics that's been there for quite a long time, and then still under the democracy discourse. Again, the democracy term has lost some of its shine, especially given countries like America and what they've been doing around the world, invading the world under the guise of democracy. So it's that, what is the new, like, should we still be organizing under democracy? Should that be the term that we should be working with as we move forward, or what new terms are there that we need to start mobilizing around? Jerry, it'd be interesting to hear your views, especially given that you've been in the democratic space, you've been in the space of environmental activism, you've been in the space of women rights. So language and the kind of language that we need to use to achieve the human dignity that's needed for Kenya. Is democracy the right discourse, or what should we be? What's the narrative that we need to coin or adopt moving forward?
Kingwa, it said that democracy is still the best known governance system around the world, but that doesn't mean it's the final. I think it's just that somebody hasn't found a different system. And even the two people who founded democracy, two Greek people who founded democracy, still said at that time that that is what they had to offer, but that didn't mean it was perfect. So I think we need to start from that premise, that if we could find a better system, then we would work with that better system. And therefore we should never be totally satisfied that because we have democracy, it is the end of everything. And I just want to say a few things about democracy. That for me, the freedom to elect a government of my choice, and that government must not be rigged out. If I elect a government, and if that government wins, it shouldn't be rigged out, because democracy is also about trust. We need to be able to trust the system. We need to be able to trust the officials. We need to be able to trust that the system is going to deliver for us the government that we elect. But if every time we vote, we are never sure whether that election will be rigged or not, then people have apathy, because trust, when you don't have trust, you have apathy. If you see the numbers that came out in 2002 to vote, as compared to the numbers that have come the following years, the numbers reduced, because when hope is reduced, you also, a lot of people now stay at home and say, what's the use? Even if I vote, my vote always gets lost. So it's important that when we elect a government, that government is not rigged out. That trust of the officials that are running the election is something that is not a by the way, but the norm. That should be the norm for us in Kenya and for Africa as a whole. Then if for every citizen to be able to elect somebody of their choice, we shouldn't rely on money. And I agree that Mheshimiwa there has said, a lot of good leaders are unable to vie because they can't afford it. Elections in Kenya are some of the most expensive elections, one within East Africa and also within Africa. We are the most expensive country during elections. So what happens? Rather than good leaders who have not amassed the kind of money that is required, and especially to bribe voters, and I will say that openly, because if you look at the type of leaders we have, majority of the leaders we have, it is only because they had money to manipulate the vote. And as long as you have money to manipulate the vote, you cannot sit back and say you have been elected democratically. It is because you had money and you were able to manipulate that vote. Then the other thing I wanted to say is that democracy for me is also respect for minorities. And I spoke a bit about that. Minorities and the marginalized, and especially due to ethnicity in Kenya, sometimes religious differences, different abled people, and also women are disregarded. We rely more on the tyranny of numbers than on merit. And it is time we started relying on merit of the candidates. But in Kenya, the tyranny of numbers is what governs us. It's what we go by. And everybody is running around to be in a group that has the tyranny of numbers rather than in a group that believes in something that can fully deliver for this nation. So for me, what we are creating or what we have in Kenya is what Mutahi Ngugi called democracy dictatorship. Yes, it is through majority sometimes, but it's, tyranny of numbers. So my prayer is that in my lifetime, I shall witness a woman president, a president from Turkana, a president from a Borana president, and a different abled person, like Abraham Lincoln. People, we don't have to have only people who can walk with 2 feet, who have 2 arms, who have 2 able eyes. We can have a person also with disability running this country. Then if any of those people are elected in this country, I will know that we have true democracy. But right now, we are relying on that tyranny of numbers. We are relying on money. We are relying on a patriarchy culture. And therefore we are trapped. We are still trapped as a nation. And this is not just for Kenya. This is something that's happening across Africa. Africa is trapped with a culture that will for a long time not deliver for us the credible leaders we need to move this continent from the quagmire of lack of development to something sustainable. Let me take a pause there, Kingwa, and thanks. Over.
Okay. So on one hand, thanks for that, Njeri, and especially the ideas of trust. That's a very powerful word that is missing, a word and an ingredient that's missing in leadership. Without trust, leadership is really none. There's no contract. There's no relationship, because leadership is about relationship. And I think I use the word, when I talk about rethinking the question of democracy, I think it's about, there's a time in the 90s that the word democracy was such a mobilizing term. Like you use the word, I think it was even almost illegal to use the term democracy. The time when the two, waving two fingers was, some of the politicians, the sycophantic politicians were saying that your fingers are gonna be cut off. But I'm approaching this from the perspective of narrative and framing change, and the idea of the terminology that we use. We are all in the same space. Maybe it's that we haven't been, coming together like in an annual forum, but we all are looking for the same thing. And the thing that we all are looking for is human dignity in our different spheres. David is doing it through politics and through development work. Caroline is doing it through getting more women into leadership and training more women in leadership and mentoring them. George is doing it through ensuring that justice for the unheard and the unseen is continually on the national agenda. So, but it's about that if we are going, first of all, we have to recognize that we are a constituency. All of us here as a group, the participants. It's just that we don't use terminology of the left and the right in Kenya, but the one thing that brings us all together, we do have left-leaning values of humanity, values of the human being and the human being's worth even above the value of capital and property. But it's that if we are going to be the agenda setters, because that's what we need to be, if we are going to be the agenda setters, then part of the things that we need to figure is languaging. How are we going to language change? How are we going to create a group such that, because even if I'm in politics and David is in politics and Caroline is in politics, I don't see them as my enemies. I would help them. I would help, and they would help me. I think I don't know if it's a different generation that sees things differently. That sees things, it's not just a lose-win, but it can actually be a win-win. So it would then be the question of what is the new narrative of the 21st century that we need to use to excite Kenyans back into really being so eager about politics and the potential of leadership. Like when we see back in the 90s, the rallies that Kina Matiba and Kina Honorable Orengo and the change makers, like there was a sense of excitement in the country. It was a people's process rather than an elite politician's process. So that's a very roundabout way of saying, how do we package the constituency of people with left-leaning values and to then achieve what we are looking for? And maybe, George, it would be interesting to hear you on this, because I know this is something that you have been overtly thinking a lot and actually even trying to do at the Human Rights Commission.
I think it's, thank you very much, Kingwa, for that question. And it's a question that has gripped a lot of people in a lot of places as people see democratic regression, as people see the sonkonization of politics, where you have all these very sort of as kind as possible, where you've got these people who are in the image of the Nairobi governor, Mike Sonko, ascending public office and being very successful at it and remaining for long periods. The question becomes, what has gone wrong, and how does the democracy now deliver an increasing number of those types of people? And I think I'll give you the answer that has, one of the answers that has come from that particular discourse, which has got to do with a view that people have withdrawn from democratic participation because they're trying to get and find private solutions for what are essentially public problems. You have an increasing number of us opting out of the public education system, for example, because it is not delivering what it once did, establishing an alternative education system, establishing our own security systems, establishing our own survival and existence systems that are outside of that which the state is supposed to provide, because we've given up on the state and we've given up on who goes to the state. Now, that giving up on the state creates this type of politician, firstly, that if you elect him or her, they're going to make the state work for the people. And because the people, I mean, the bulk of the people can't get the state to respond to their problems. And they looked, and this type of politician has looked at the void, at the gap created by state retreat and state weakness, and exploited that and promised that if you give me political power, I'll make the state work for you. And these are, as I said, is a promise that is in vacuosity, because the analysis as to how and why the state has failed is not right at the point that this person is seeking political office. So you have all these demagogues, you've got all these populists and populism that is rising, and that is supposed to be the creature of that. Trump came to power as an anti-establishment politician, riding exactly on that sentiment, which of course he married with white supremacy. So, what is the antidote? That the antidote to that has got to make to reestablish the linkage that is now lost between human security, the people's interests for survival on an everyday basis, which the state is the guarantor for, and the vote. So if you vote interest in public affairs, it has consequences on whether or not you survive as an individual, and whether or not your family survives, whether or not your kids get an education, or whether or not your kids get treatment when they need it. And the COVID-19 experience we've had is a good example of how this works for, or this does not work for us. When COVID came and Uhuru Kenyatta announced a lockdown across the country and said everybody goes home from 6 o'clock, it was 7, including in Mombasa. The first challenge for Mombasa, how Mombasa could not comply with that order, was the ferry. The people on the island who take 4 hours to cross from on one way every day to cross onto the Likoni side, they could not cross in time to be in compliance with the presidential order. This order wasn't a transport, it was just a health measure, that we have a health problem called COVID-19. To deal with that problem, we are introducing a new measure that requires everybody to be home at a particular time. For you to cross that ferry in time to comply with the presidential order, you needed to be on your way home as early as 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That was not foreseen. Why has that ferry not been built? From the time we had the Mtongwe accident, with Moi leaving the accident and the carnage and going to China as Kenyans retreated their dead from the channel on their own. Moi comes back, he promises. From that time, there were promises that a bridge was going to be built. Up to now, it has not been built. And this is an example of spectacular neglect. This is an example that your money, your taxes, your choices in terms of leadership, it has no consequences for how well you live. So when you get caught up with COVID-19, a health problem, the pre-existing disabilities for the country, the pre-existing socioeconomic circumstances, for example, the lack of an efficient urban transport system becomes your first your first line of vulnerability to that public problem of health nature. So we've got to go back. So we've got to link and COVID response. I mean, COVID-19 demonstrated across the country and continues and will continue to demonstrate how poor the leadership we have at the moment is. So the only way to excite the public back into the idea that the vote matters is to tell them, because the vote matters, then because the way the vote has been exercised has been incorrect, that is why you in times of need, like during COVID-19, there is no government that is there for you. You are on your own. You pay taxes, but you are ultimately on your own. The government tells you you will go to quarantine at your own cost. The Public Health Act says quarantine is if there's a public health emergency or a pandemic, and the people need to be quarantined, they will be quarantined at state expense. That is the Public Health Act, an act of parliament that was passed in 1921. It is 99 years old. Now that act, we can't, when we start quarantining people, we tell them, you will pay for it. We have no money as a government to pay for your quarantine. And everything that has been done in responding to COVID-19 has been out of pocket for the citizen who already pays a tax that is supposed to be taking care of their problems because they are a taxpayer. So it's to make those linkages to the fact that the vote, your circumstances and the responsiveness of government is directly linked to the fact that your vote no longer counts.
Thank you, George. Just really the reminder of how the apathy of the middle-class Kenyans becomes a vicious cycle, and really the relationship of the social, the political, the economic. And again, just also reminding us that right now where we are, much as it's a very bad space. It's a very bad time for the country, but which means that it's also an opportunity for leadership. There's an opportunity for leadership to come out and make itself known. And already we are seeing new leaders coming out, because citizens can only be lied for so long. It will depend on then also how long this COVID situation will go. But already there's a clear realignment in terms of who, and it is visible, who really cares, who has a heart for people, who is doing what, who is working with the communities. And people will always know the leader that has them at heart. At the end of the day, leadership is a relationship. It's a relationship. And I think Honorable Ochieng has stepped out for a moment, but he was rigged out on a party. He was rigged out. He had to go to court. He eventually had to set up his own outfit. But even when his win was taken away from him, after the by-election, he came back with a landslide. He came back on a landslide, which means that even if the electoral systems can be skewed, even if ethnic politics and warlord politics will be played, that a leader, somebody who's actually with the people, holding their hands, changing their lives, will come out and will be known. So this is just to let all the aspiring politicians out there to know that keep the faith, that don't be cynical, that there is hope. I'm just going to read some of the. Yes, Honorable Ochieng, I was talking about the fact that people will always recognize their leaders, and the fact that leadership is about relationship. And just giving the example of the by-election, which came back with a landslide after having been rigged out, and just letting people know that, rather just again, reiterating the idea, the message that good leadership, where it is, it cannot be ignored, and there's an opportunity for it. So anyone that is wanting to get into leadership and wants to do something, that there still is there still very much is the opportunity. I'm seeing that Wanjira has joined us, and I'm going to come to her. I just want to read some of the comments. Rosa Wangu said it's good to see Caroline. Her story is inspiring. Charles Olwamba says we have steered all processes of accountability and governance towards election periods. Accountability processes is an everyday thing. Felix Orwa says values attained by our young politicians from the political elite is what informs what they stand for. I applaud Honorable David for his courage to debunk the perception of dominant political party systems. Wanjiro Wanjira says, I think in this era, it would be easier to rally people behind social justice than democracy. People now want to hear what's in it for them and their children and their future. Also, the new generation has completely separated itself from tribalism, which makes me very optimistic about our future as a nation. Speaking for my generation, we are tired of personality. We're going to ask someone to mute themselves. Is it David?
I think it's mine. Okay.
We are tired of personality cults of politics. We are actually wondering what's wrong with current day politicians. Why are they swearing allegiance to this or that person? We want leaders that deliver on their promise. This government has Mheshimiwa, just maybe kindly mute. There's an echo. So we're going to come back to you, Mheshimiwa and Caroline. But for now, I want to ask Wanjiro. Karibu sana, Wanjiro. We are so happy to have you with us and really very proud of you. I'm very proud of you and the work that you're doing with the Mathare Social Justice Center and your work, just continually fanning the flame for humanity and just your continual courage. Maybe just to introduce you, Wanjiro Wanjira is a co-founder of Mathare Social Justice Center. She's a fourth-year student at the University of Nairobi pursuing a bachelor's degree in international relations and diplomacy. Wanjira is also the founder of Matigari Book Club, which is a children's initiative focusing on emancipation of young African minds. She was a convener of Women in Justice Centers. Wanjira is passionate about social justice for all. And I think what I'd be interested to ask Wanjira would be, hi Wanjira, can you hear me? Hello, Wanjira.
Hello, King Wakamenshu. Thank you for having me. Hello, all the panelists. I've been following since the start. There was a technical hitch with my, I don't know what just happened, but I'm here now and I'm happy to be part of this.
Okay, thank you so much. And before you joined, we actually started the discussion. We played the clip where you were just somewhere around Jamia Mosque and with officers, and where you said that when people lose their fear, I'm just paraphrasing, but you really spoke so strongly, and that clip went viral just because of your fierceness and you are so clear that no one is going to push you, no one is going to harass you. And we had a conversation on the phone, I think it was last week. And you told me the background to that and where that emotion was coming from. And so maybe I think it would be great to share with us really just what all that was about. And then we're gonna also listen to where you think we are doing in terms of democratic participation.
Okay, thanks. So on this day, first of all, we had a demonstration in Mathare against police brutality and police killings. And before that, five years ago, we've been documenting cases of police killings. And we even have a report out as Mathare Social Justice Center. It's titled Who is Next Report. You can check it out on our website. Now, the emotional side of it is for 5 years, I have had to work with women who have lost their children to a police bullet. I have had to go to court cases. I have had to, it's taken, and me also being a victim of police killings. I have a brother who was shot by police during the 2007-2008 post-election violence. So I'm looking at a government that has mandated the police to actually shoot and kill people in this country, a country that I know very well, was seriously fought for. And I know the government is very clear on, or maybe they don't know. No, I'm sure they know they need to provide social justice for these people. They need to make sure there are no citizens in this country that are actually starving. Every day we hear billions of money stolen, billions. I watch news and I'm like, you mean billions of money are stolen? And I have children in my community that are sleeping hungry. Since Corona started, things have gone very, very bad over there. We were already poor, but now after Corona, it's gotten worse for families in Mathare and elsewhere in every other informal settlement, I'm sure. So I can even see with my eyes that 6 months ago, this child was a bit chubbier. And now this child looks very malnutritioned. And the news that I'm getting is BBI. So I'm very mad with this government. I feel like they have misplaced priorities. They're just playing games with people's lives. It's like they don't know why they're here. And me being a young person, I have zero allegiance to Ruto or Uhuru or Jubilee or ODM. I'm concerned with what service you're giving to the public. I'm concerned with your leadership. Like, I feel that's my generation. We want to see, what are you all about? We don't care what tribe you come from. We don't care what political party you come from. We want to see results. And that's a good thing. Now, these policemen are arresting me for exercising my patriotic duty, because you have got to be a patriot to care about the issues of this nation. And there are very many patriotic Kenyans out here. But I know some were afraid of coronavirus, but for me, corona or not, we were dying anyway. So I had to go out on the streets on that day. And being Saba, I did not expect the government to act the way it acted. I was quite surprised. I was like, this government cannot even respect Saba, the day we actually reclaimed our sovereignty as a nation. So we were tear gassed at our office preparing to march, but we had to get to town anyway. So we organized ourselves to get into matatus and get to town. Before I was arrested, we had several run-ins here. Tulikuwa tumesumbuana na askari. Tulianza archives, tukaenda Harambee Avenue. So by the time I was getting arrested, the whole morning it was running, but we were demonstrating. For me, I was like, the message is getting home. Almost the whole of CBD was tear gassed on that day. So when I was arrested, I was like, first of all, I am not breaking any laws. I am a peaceful protester. I'm not armed with anything. Before the video started showing, the policeman had first slapped me. And yeah, so I was that mad because, first of all, I was badly slapped by this policeman. And I asked him, why are you slapping me? And his response was like, you haven't seen anything yet. Ile vita naenda kukupiga. So I was like, I'm not going anywhere with this policeman. First of all, he's a male officer. He has no business arresting me. And in the video, you saw how I was manhandled. I was mishandled, So I made my decision. I'm not going anywhere with these people. And in my mind, I was like, this is where...
Manhandled is the correct term.
Yes, I was manhandled. So for me, it was like, this is now the people, me representing the people versus the dictator, because that was dictatorship on that day. And people had to win. I was like, this is where we know if people power actually means anything in this country. The policeman tried taking me by legs, like kuninua juju. Yani, I had made up my mind. I'm not going anywhere with this policeman. So if it took clutching onto the gari, yokio ya gari, and I even hurt my finger, I was bleeding, but I wasn't. It was more of mental strength than physical strength because I'm very tiny. These are 3 policemen armed with tear gas canisters and guns. And I just had myself and my voice and my strong mind, because I knew I was in the right. I knew it is them that are on the wrong. And this policeman didn't even have a reason for arresting me. When I was like, give me a reason. Why are you arresting me? They were dumbfolded. And the message had to get home. They needed to stop killing us. I think it's ridiculous that there are even Kenyans out there who support police killings. It's simple. Poverty is the cause of all of these things. Social injustice is the cause of all of these things. And nobody will ever rest until we all have social justice. Nobody will ever rest until we have children that do not sleep hungry in this country. So for me, it's the governments that are avoiding responsibility and trying to shoot us by eliminating the problem, because the poor people will always be a problem in this country. Yeah, unless the government finds a way to take care of them. It's not, it will not go
What
away.
would you, that was very, very, just very, very powerful, very inspiring. How, out of 10, so we've been asking all the panelists to just rate how we are doing in terms of democracy. What would you give Kenya out of 10?
3 out of 10.
And maybe the last question before we go to Caroline and Mheshimiwa Ochieng is, to what extent do you think democracy is the thing, is it like, okay, or maybe it should be, what is the thing that we need to be mobilizing around to make sure that humanity is the central thing for us as a country? Because you're right that we have normalized extrajudicial, like we've normalized it. It's so normal. It's not front page news, but those are people's sons, fathers, brothers getting killed. And it's in an environment where that, rather than nurturing, rather than trying to assist, rehabilitate, grow these young men, our default reaction is to just kill them, to take them off the face of the earth. So there's the need to that we are, and I think it's what we are all trying to do, introduce a new paradigm of what should be allowed, what culture, what is accepted, where are the things, where is it that we cannot, what line is it that we cannot cross? Because right now humanity is in tatters. So what is it that how do you think we need to organize to be able to bring all this to become something of the past moving forward? How do we need to start organizing as a group, as a group that has values of humanity, whether we are in politics like Mheshimiwa Ochieng, whether we're in movement building on the gender side, and politics like Caroline, whether we are in where Njeri is, both in international and local human rights, and George involved in the local civil society. So how do we need to start organizing and mobilizing?
Okay, this might come off as weird, but I think first of all we need to cultivate a culture of loving each other as a nation, loving each other as the Black nation, because everywhere in the world the problems of the Black people are the same, and we need to realize the root cause of our problems. I'll still go back to social justice. We need to organize around social justice. We need to organize. I'd love to live in a country where education is free for all people, from the time you start going to school to the time you go to university, because allowing education for university students only, university education to be affordable only for the rich, further perpetuates classism, and there's always going to be a class for the rich and the poor. So to bridge that gap, we need to ensure everybody is able to go to school without having much trouble. And then the quality of this education, the teachers, the doctors, everyone is feeling very unappreciated in the work that they're doing, because this government does not really care. We need to do these things because we love to do them. And the government needs to create a conducive environment for everyone to thrive in whatever it is they have chosen to do. So loving each other, when I love you, I do not care whether you are Borana or Kikuyu or Luo. I do not care whether you come from a rich family or not. I want to see you prosper. I want to see you happy every other day. So, and that will mean being comfortable with parting with a few of your comfortabilities, parting with a few of your shillings per month to ensure a child in Kibera does not go hungry that day. So basically taking care of each other and not assuming, I've lost hope in this government. I do not expect this government to do anything for me. I do not expect the government to take care of the poor. I'm done.
I know you told me also about what happened with your father.
Oh, yes. Oh, no. I don't want to talk about that because it is quite
all right.
depressing.
I know, that's all right. That's okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Mheshimiwa Ochieng, how can we institutionalize love in our political parties? And love, of course, like the Bible says, and that we know that love is beyond talk, love is action. In a way, you actually embody that. Maybe you don't use the term, but for me, when I see leadership, someone who's actually very much planning about how to work with the people, who's looking at their problems, looking at the problems of there's so many school dropouts. Everyone wants to be a border. What do we need to do? We need to build technical institutions for them. But what do we further need to do to entrench love as a value in our politics? First of all, do you think that's something that is doable? And how do we make it the norm rather than the violence and the hatred that it is right now?
Thank you so much. I think when Jude talks about two very important things, one is about patriotism, love for the country, love for one another. And if you love the country and you want the country to move, of course, then you care for one another. And so I would take it that way, that for us to build a project called Kenya, we must all care for the country, we must all care for the well-being of the other. And she says very well that she doesn't care whether the person she loves or she's going to work for, with, or assist is Luo, Luya, Kalenjin, whatever. It doesn't matter. We are all Kenyan and we need to work on that. Now, that is the biggest problem we have in this country today, Kingwa. Especially for those of us who are going to school. We're the biggest tribalists. We're the guys who want to get a job. You go to school well, you think you qualify, but you want to get a job because you know somebody or somebody knows somebody that you know that should help you. And it shocks you really that the people who live in Kibra, and without any pun intended, the people who live in our, Kibra, Mathare, these places, people who live there have no issues with class, they have no issues with tribe. You know, Onyango borrows salt from Wanjiku and Cheriwot borrows water from Moran. Life goes on for them. For them, the issue is what is required. Water, what is required, salt, what is required, food to feed each other. So at that level, for me, there's no issue. The issue is that we have allowed, and I said it earlier, we have allowed our leaders to divide us for so long on those ethnic backgrounds. And that's why I agree with George Kegoro when he said earlier that you cannot tell us that you want to unite the country through BBI. And the unit of mobilizing through BBI has been, a meeting is done in Kisii for the Kisis. One is done in Kakamega for the lawyers. One is done in Kajiado and Narok for the Maasais. And you are saying you want to bring these communities together, yet your mode of mobilizing is purely ethnic mobilization and balkanization. And so I believe that at our level and at our age, we must try as much as possible to remove the issue of ethnicity. I can tell you for sure, I can bet my whole life that Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, William Ruto, Musalia Mudavadi, all these guys who have been playing the field for the last 35 years have no reason to fight ethnicity. They have no reason to fight ethnicity because they want to use it to get to power. They have no reason to say, I don't like this tribe, because that is their modus operandi. That has been their way of doing things. At our level,
their currency, it's their legal tender, political tender.
Yes, and if you remove it, then they have nothing to talk about. I can tell you for sure that there's nothing Kalonzo will tell Kambas once you remove the tribal equation. There's nothing that Raila will tell Luos if there's no tribe in it. So if we can work out of a way of devaluing ethnicity. And number two, if you could work at strengthening our institutions. And our current constitution as a way. I work in parliament now. I see how parliament is so underutilized by the public, in my opinion. The MPs are so clueless on what needs to be done. And yet we have frameworks, public participation process that could help us build parliament to provide oversight. Kegoro talked about it earlier. And you know now that what the president is now doing to bring all the small parties under what you call Jubilee. So cooperate with so and so, try an argument so and so. What does it lead to? It tells you it's taking us back to 92, where you have one or two parties only in the country. And this must be fought by every well-meaning Kenyan. We must encourage political parties that have ideology and all that. And I want to interest young Kenyans. Like what Wanjiru has said, if you are done with these guys the way Wanjiru is, if you are done with them the way David Ocean is, then you must all come together, because there are so many of us who are done with these guys and who want to do the right thing.
And probably the majority.
Yeah, so we must get a way of getting together and having this done. There's something that Jerry talked about earlier about money, bribery. These things exist in our politics. But then I wanted us to think about it from Wanjiru's point of view also. That the fact that there'll be money used in politics in Kenya is not new, it's not going to go away because Ochieng said so. We must get a way of mobilizing resources for us to fight these guys. The reason you see William Ruto on one corner and Raila on one corner and Uhuru on one corner, they believe they're going to take us to their route. It's because they have resources to do this. So we must also be willing to give that 1 shilling, that 2 shillings. We must be willing to fund this process. And this also goes to the donor community, the Konrad Adenauers of the world, that if you're going to create change, if you're going to institutionalize democracy, if you're going to create change, you must be willing to put your money where your mouth is and vice versa. Let's not hide and say, oh, you know, I'm non-political, I'm non-partisan. No, a way must be found to fund good ideas. A way must be found to ensure that these good ideas are resourced so that they can get to the center stage. The reason that they're going to buy all of us out of the media is because Jubilee can buy media space, ODM can buy media space,
yes,
another party can,
yes.
but we can't buy because we are saying we don't have money. So you must get resources to have this happening. And finally, I just want to tell Kenya that all is not lost. We are at that level where if we decide as a people that we don't want this gibberish, we've been played for too long, we don't want BBI, we want a new way of doing things, this constitution is the best we can have, let's implement it and express these views without, because it disturbs you much, that the Kisi know very well that this is the right thing for us, the Luos know this is the right thing, but when these warlords come, when this tribal jingoists come, then all these right things that we know are forgotten. We now say so and so has said so. So and so has read it for us. We are not going to read it. So Kenyans, young people must not just have interest in politics, must not just have ideas, must just not do Twitter and Facebook. They must come out, participate physically in emancipating and making this country the country that we want it to be.
Yeah, very good points. And I'm tempted to say that I think you should have coffee with George and Jerry separately, and because they're very well resourced. Okay, first of all, very grounded in terms of where we need to be as a country, and also in terms of their networks and their contacts. And they have been continually trying to set up different avenues for change. So for me, I'm all about, let's bring all the energies of similar people working together, because I mean, just from what I know about what you're doing, David, it's impressive. It really needs to be supported. I feel that also sometimes it's very easy for us, the idealists and the dreamers in civil society, to forget our colleagues in the politics, which is a bad thing, because the politics is so toxic, which means that it's a very lonely space for people like you, and it's easy for your dreams to die out and for you to end up nowhere. So I would really recommend that you reach out to George and Jerry and just really pick up on the conversation, compare notes, see where we're going. We have to be together in all of this. And recommend Caroline, but I know she's a member of a political party, although she'd also be a very good resource to your party. So that's also as well. And I want to ask Caroline.
Before you go to Caroline, there's something you just mentioned that I need just to turn a bit. The idea that we need to network, but also where you sit, Kingwa, and within the civil society frameworks. Some of the guys who now sit in prime position in this government and in Kenya came from civil society, but they go there to get where we came from, know where we need to go. And I think we'll need to also start building new cadres for the civil society to help push this agenda. Because we have the old civil society that, you know, had Orengo, Kivutha Kibwana, and all these guys who then joined government in 02. Some of them have done very well, some of them have changed a bit, but we need to build the new civil society for the new things and for the new times.
That's very prescient that you say that. In fact, if Captain Mbati is listening to you, he's smiling, because that's something that he's been continually saying. the need, because there is, the fire is not as much as where it once was. Our influence as a sector is quite, yeah. So I think that is a conversation that we do need to keep having. So we're just gonna bookmark that for now. So Caroline has a very incisive understanding of where women are today, of the ways in which women have been disadvantaged politically, and how it relates to the standard of living of people on the ground. And so I'd be interested to ask Caroline, in terms of moving forward, how do we, because there's a lot of energy in the women's movement that has never been harnessed. To me, that, first of all, the experiences that women go through, the experiences on a daily basis, especially women that are financially, I mean, it's actually across all classes, the kind of gender violence, the kind of treatment in political spaces, in even economic spaces. I was having a discussion with someone who was telling me that when she goes to meetings and she finds that they're like, sometimes she has to go in a man just so that to get the job, to get the tender, to get the project. And Caroline, what do you think women need to be doing? What do you think women need to be doing moving forward? How can we harness the energy of all that has been happening over the years, so that we finally get what we want to see? Yeah, so that women finally get the lives that they want to see.
I'd just like, first of all, to say that the issue of women in this country, and when I talk about women, I talk both the young women and the older women. The issue number one is that democracy needs to be the heart of the people. The issue why we have people like Wanjira, who are so mentally strong, say they have given up with the government because she is a woman, is because democracy, the heart of democracy in Kenya is centered around our politicians and around the executive. Until democracy becomes the heart of the people and not the leaders, that is when democracy will work for everybody, not just for women. And then let's look at it from this perspective. Transformation will come when democracy stops being focused on election day. Women are used to wear lassos and dance for leaders only on election day. And also we need to understand that for the women in the grassroots to make good political decisions, they need skills and resources. And democratic participation is not an election day going to tick a ballot box and leaving. The women in this country, do they understand that how to lobby? Do they know how to lobby around to bring change? Do they know the process it takes to boycott what does not stand for them? So do the women understand about the policy making processes? Do they participate in decision making processes? I, for instance, I'm a municipality director in Kajiado County Municipality. I represent the voice of the people. But on the other hand, I'm going to make it very plain that when the resources, the international resources come in, the executive have a higher voice than the people. And yet the role of municipality is to represent the voice of the people in terms of infrastructure and development. Wanjira said that the poor are a problem. The poor are not the problem. The poor are part of the people. They are not a problem. The reason why they're not able to make decisive decisions on election day or after election in decision making, in the decision making processes when it comes to development, when it comes to the budget making processes, is because they are used as rubber stamps. They are used as rubber stamps, and so we cannot really see the voice of the women, of the voice of the people. When, for instance, in my county, and I'm sure every other county goes through this, you're called for the budget making process. You're not even given the budget at hand. You're told to come mashinani, and yet you are told that you go to the county's website. This is a room filled with people from mashinani. They have come for the budget participating forum. There are no handouts, they're told to go to the Everything is made so difficult for the people to participate. And yet what they say is not what will be implemented by the executive. So on the other hand, so the majority of the people who participate actually in this public participation forums are the women. They come up in their numbers, but after a while, when they see or when they their voice is not taken, their projects that they have said they want to be implemented are not implemented, then they even become apathetic. Now let's go to election day. Women, on the other hand, they're only used on election day. That is why you see, you are saying they're vibrant, but when are they vibrant? Majority are only used on that election day to vote for a certain leader. But for the next 5 years, the process, the leader does not go back to them. It is now the middle class women who have a bigger role now to try and mobilize in policy making, in lobbying for change. But their numbers are not enough, and their voice is not loud enough until all the women have the skills and the resources to lobby for this change, to understand what is the policy making processes that will benefit them. Because I, as a person who vied for senator, I remember some women came around and asked me, who do I think I am for vying for senator? Because for them, they believe that this role is not for women. So, and it is older women than me who are asking me, who do I think I am? But what does the Constitution say? So if the women themselves, I'm not talking about the middle class, the grassroots majority who vote, what I really respect about the Mashinani grassroots, the lower class, rain or shine, snow or whatever condition, they will come out to vote. In their walking stick, it's so elderly, they are so patriotic, but the leaders unfortunately do not honor these people. They do not honor them at all. The people that Wanjira is talking about in Madare, those people vote relentlessly. A middle class person, to be honest, during a voting day, if they have a business deal, they can overlook that voting. And if we say it as it is the truth. Yeah. But that person who is patriotic to Kenya, are they rewarded back by their nation? Their voice is not heard. They are only used on election day. After that, they don't understand what is the budget, what the national government, has given to their county, how much tax their county has collected, what goes to the infrastructure. So until we start representing, democracy is about representing the voice of the people. As when, people like Wanjira are the ones who we need in those executive places, who speak up for the people. And there is one of us here who asked, there is no they'd like to see a young person who stands for someone. My God, we are so many of us. There are many young people who their stories are not said or done. They're out there in the community. As young people, our strength is not necessarily monetary. Our strength is the vigor, the energy that we have. As Wanjira said, she's small-bodied, but her mental state, and that is the same mental state I had to vie for. Being in a patriotic community, unanyima microphone hata ya kuomba kura, but because I know what I am there for and I stand for justice, I don't stand for any number one, number two, or anyone. I don't stand for anyone. I stand for justice and for the people. So I will stand there and nitaomba hiyo kura by fire, by force. So women are resilient by nature. Young people are resilient. We are many of us who don't stand for any tribe or any individual. So I'd really like to highlight that Njeri said that she'd like to see a women president. I believe Kenyans have had, when it reached, we are at the breaking point. Kenya is young people and women are rediscovering their strength and their ability. They are coming up and asking questions. New questions are being asked. Does it always have to be this way? Does it always have to be a man who is sitting? I can assure you, I was only senator on the ballot box. But I hear right now in the 2022 election, there'll be like 9 women vying. Because once somebody shows that it can be done, I did it and I didn't die, Wow. So it shows women that we are getting there. But on the other hand, I really like to highlight that women at the grassroots need the skills and the resources to make the right political decisions, and to understand that democracy is not just about the voting day, but to understand other processes like budget making, lobbying for change, policy making. So I'd really like to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I saw David nodding. I think he's already pegging you as his next presidential candidate for his party. So David, you'll remember that I was one who introduced you to her. Yeah, those are such strong points, Caroline, just reminding us that democracy is not just about the voting day. And I don't know how well you are acquainted with Jerry. Have you guys met before?
I've only seen her in forums, you know, she sits at the high table while the rest of us are listening to her, following her. She has a lot of wisdom that, yeah.
Extremely, and take it from me, she is the most down-to-earth and humane.
But this morning, my daughter-in-law said to me that you go to church together. So you sent her to your church the card, the advert to your church group, and she said, "Oh, Caroline, you're going to be in the same forum." But let me make maybe my concluding remarks, Kingwa, sure, since you mentioned my name now. You know, COVID has introduced a bigger threat to freedom and democracy than we ever knew before. That when a state is supposed to be protected and as killing the vulnerable people in vulnerable communities. And I just want to say that repression will not help to control the pandemic. These assaults on freedom, transparency, and democracy will make it more difficult for societies to respond quickly. And it will make it more difficult for us as a nation to recover, because it's not the government that's going to help us recover. It is a concerted effort of the whole nation. In fact, it's still not the government that's going to make us not get ill. It's a concerted effort of each and every individual. So for me, the role of communities is critical, because it's only when communities understand what is at stake and what they need to do to protect themselves that they will be cooperative. But if you use too much force, excessive force, as we have seen, communities defy. And as Wanjera was saying, maybe during those demonstrations, because of the harassment and the way things changed during the demonstration, it is likely that maybe a number of people were infected on that day. But had they been allowed to follow the pattern that they wanted to follow, everything could have gone on smoothly. I just wanted to say that I want to defend why I said 6, because Wanjera wasn't there. She has given our nation, I don't know whether she has given the government or our nation, a 3. And I want to say, as somebody who has worked outside this country severally and across the continent, Kenya is still, we are not the top. I think we compete with Nigeria and South Africa in terms of democracy. But we are one of the 3 countries in Africa that has one of the most vibrant civil society. Never mind that it seems to be going low. When it seems there is that are not as visible anymore, but the Wanjeras come up and they are visible. The Carolines come up and they are visible. So I don't have to be visible for 30 years, although I am still here. I don't have to be visible for 30 years, but I celebrate the newcomers into it. I celebrate the newcomers because those newcomers are bringing in something that, keeping, it's a baton. It's a baton, you pass on the baton. And even if you are in the race, you can be just doing a jog, your morning jog, but they are running 100 meters, they are running 200 meters, they are doing the marathon. You are still there doing your morning jog and supporting them. So maybe to conclude my comments, and because I know you also wanted us to maybe explain what it is we are doing. Having worked in the civil society for a long time, I have realized that the problem is not institutions. Kenya now created some of the strongest constitutional institutions that we could have. We have institutions that should be able to take care of this nation. We have one of the best constitutions within the continent and around the world, by the way. But how many Kenyans are enjoying this constitution? How many Kenyans are enjoying these gifts? How many Kenyans are enjoying what this country has to offer? Very few, because we do not understand what we have. So my role right now, Ingwa, is to support individuals. I'm training individuals, I'm doing mentorship, I'm doing personal development and leadership training. And I think maybe the network has gone off, but that is what I've realized, that unless the individuals, the Wanjeras, the Carolines, taking up the mantle, we are going to continue being oppressed. So we need 1 million Wanjeras, we need 1 million Carolines, we need 1 million Kegoros, we need 1 million Ochengs. That way, this nation will move and the continent will move. Let me finish there because I think George also needs to give maybe a parting comment. Over. Thank you so much, everybody. Just in case we don't get time to speak again, because I can see like the minutes have gone.
Yes, it's interesting, and I like that you talked about community and how that even as we are this wider group, there's the need for us to organize even in our small individual niche communities. Wanjere is doing a great job with the Mathare Social Justice Forums, as well as the other, because there's a whole group of social justice forums, so that is community building. Caroline has been doing a great job trying to, with women in politics. David has been trying to get young leaders, both men and women, people of ideals together and try to mentor them. So I think even after today, like I want us to please keep on networking, keep on comparing notes. George has also been has been working with civil society groups to build capacity from within, like to build the community to amplify the voice. So I believe we are on track. I do believe that we are on track. For me, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be alive, and as I don't know who's, but it's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to do things, to try and do new things, even if it's a time of confusion. There's still a lot that we can do in this time. So Jerry has given her last word. So maybe we shall just, moving forward for democracy, what do we need to do? So there's just 1 or 2 sentences from George, and then we can have David, then Wanjira, then Caroline. Moving forward, what do we need to be doing? What do we need to do? Or what are you already doing that you want to invite us to?
I think we just continue working the way the anti-democratic forces are working, to keep talking to one another and to keep finding new ways to express our courage, because one of how we get defeated is summed up by what Wanjira said to those policemen who are arresting her. The day we lose our fear is the day we lose our fear is the day they lose their power over us. That really sums it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, George. David.
Thank you so much. I think in the current setup, there are a couple of things we may need to do. One is judiciary has been a very good institution helping us to stand up against government, and we need to support judiciary in all ways possible. Number 2, the media used to play a very good role, but you've seen the media facing a lot of problems lately, challenges, but we must still, in our own ways, try to support the media to be able to do what they used to do to ensure, because the history that George gave us, the media had a very strong role to play in ensuring that the country moves forward and people know what's happening in the country. Yes. But being a politician, I will say this, that let us not give up. Let us not leave it to politicians, because what they are counting on is that we'll get tired and we'll let them have their way. We must be on their face. We must play in the pitch where they play. And we must ensure that we play better we play clean and ensure that we win. We can. There's no other way for us to deal with ethnicity, this lack of integrity, rule of law, and electoral theft and all that. We must keep on playing our part. Let us not get tired. And where I sit, I'll keep on getting, a way of bringing together anybody with new ideas, young leaders, to ensure that in the coming elections, we incrementally create a space for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Wanjira?
We need to reject BBI. We need to ask that the constitution is implemented.
Wow, that's cool.
I mean that. What's BBI doing for us as a nation, really? We need to reject it and ask that our constitution, which is one of the best in the universe, is implemented. And the other thing is we need to be active citizens. I feel like most of the work is left for activists. We need to take up and own up, like be concerned about every single thing that happens in this country, because it is going to affect you in one way or another.
Yes. Yes.
So we need to all to take up our space as active citizens, as sovereign citizens, because the first article of the Constitution tells us that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. We need to breathe life into that article, and we could very well change this country. And remember, when we lose our fear, they lose their power.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Wanjira. Caroline?
My final word is to the young people and the women at the grassroots level in all of the 47 counties. Your governments are there for you. You should not suffer in silence or be silent. Your voice is needed and it's necessary. You as a young person, you have to step out of your comfort zone. A lot of young people are waiting for the government to do something. The government will only do what you take by force. I want to tell the women that leadership is not given, it's taken. And if there is no seat on the table, bring your own seat to the table. It is aggressive, you need to be firm, but nobody will open for you the doors. It's up to you to aggressively open those doors. Young people in Kenya, it's about time you spoke. It cannot just be Wanjira and a few others. The more of us speak, the more change will come. The more we speak, the more this country will transform. By the way, the future of this nation does not rely on the government. It relies on the young people and the women of this nation. Your voice must be heard. No more dancing around men in political positions. 2022, look for a woman. Don't look at her age. Look at how she has served the community. Look at her track record, and then decide this is a woman we are going to rally about. Women are no more dancing in elections. You have to come sober at the table. Young people, you have to come sober. You cannot be bought. Your destiny is not worth 50 shillings and 100 shillings, and then for 5 years you suffer. It is time for us to awake as young people. No more excuses. Step up.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. The comments in the chat, Jacob Opara says, very insightful calls from Hesh David. We need to disentangle ourselves from ethnic kingpins politics. Felix Orwa says, our country longs for change. Unfortunately, powers of the purported drivers, that is the youth, are limited to their phone battery strengths and amount of data bundles. Addiction to social media, which our youths even misuse, can't allow them take meaningful participation towards the required change. Daisy Amdani says, it's incredible that we actually have allowed these people calling themselves leaders to ride roughshod over us. The time really has come for us to change Kenya. So we are now just at the end of this discussion, and I want to encourage everyone to really just keep in touch, keep on building your communities where you are. The panelists here, the participants, guys, let's keep on continually touching this. For me, I'm very optimistic about where we're going moving forward. So lastly, now just to hand this over back to Christoph. Christoph, thank you for hosting us, and you can officially close.
Thank you, Kinga, for moderating tonight's session. Thank you to all.
I did not thank our panelists. Guys. You guys were amazing. You were amazing, and amazing thoughts, as well as the participants, everyone who was really engaging. I see that we didn't ask questions and I was only reading from the chat. My apologies for that. Next time we look at both the Q&A and the chat. Christoph, thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you. It's always nice to see how passionate all of you discuss and fight for democracy. It's also an inspiration for me and hopefully for everyone watching and listening in. We've seen that democracy is more than that what is written on the piece of paper that we call constitution, but it's what we live day by day, and that we have to stand up for it. We have to stand up for ourselves. We also have to stand up for others, especially for those who are, for some reason, cannot or do not stand up for themselves, and then we have to raise our voices. But I think the most important part is that as we become active and as we act, we also have to organize. Political action cannot stand by itself, but as a group effort, it is much more effective, and that's how we reach our goals. And that is why we need parties, we need NGOs, we need all those civil society organizations where people, like-minded people, can come together and together raise their voices, because that means that those voices will be heard much louder everywhere. And that's also what Konrad Stiftung is supporting in Kenya, and we will continue to fight for that what is already written in the Constitution of Kenya, for participation, for engagement of all citizens of Kenya, and also to the benefit of all citizens of Kenya. And we will see what the future will bring. I think 2020 has shown us that anything is uncertain and that we cannot plan far ahead, but that whatever happens, we have to fight for what is good and what is right. We see with COVID-19 worldwide the struggle of so many people, billion of people, not only in Africa, also in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia. And we see that what we fight for with political action, that we need public services for those in need, that we also have to take care of the economy, not only in times of crisis, but even before, to have an economy in times of crisis. And all this needs organization, and all this needs participation, and it needs engagement of every single one. So I hope that everyone listening in is also willing to participate in our political processes, because sometimes it is hard and it's a long process, and it gets sometimes even boring because not much happens. But if we do not stand up and we do not fight for it, then we can be very certain that nothing will happen also in the future. But that's what it needs. It needs change in so many aspects. So feel supported by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. We are here also for those struggles. And yes, thank you all for tonight, and also for all your participation outside of our Zoom conferences. Keep it up, and good night to everyone. Thank you.
All right. Good night. Guys,
Thank you, Kingwa.
Good night, everybody.
All right, thanks. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Good night,
Bye.
Good night.
Jerry,
Good night.